I'm seeing a lot of family faces here, a lot of folks that I know before, and a lot of folks that I don't know. So I was able to network and get to know you all, and I'll be here to network and continue knowing you, some of you. So thank you for coming. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about Redux versus React context API. So one of the things that we're going to try to do is we're going to try to see the best that we can to kind of give you guys a live demo and show you some sort of the native part about it, how you can architect your application. But before we get started, let's introduce myself again. My name is Sterling. The E is silent. And don't worry, if you want to say the E, that's fine too. I'm okay with it. I'm a software engineer. I work for Cox Automotive. I'm under the digital retailing team. I'm also an inspirational speaker. What that means is I pump folks up. That's what I do. So I'm also an educator. Anyway, that's going to be the talk for today. We're going to be talking about Redux versus React context API. But before we talk about that, let's take a quick look at how a website used to look like. How about that? No CSS, no JavaScript. Who want to use something like this?
Loads fast.
Yeah.
But now, when we think about a website like that, especially our users, they want more functionality. They want to be able to do things online. For example, they want to be able to do transactions. Some of them want to be able to put their orders and see it in the next 2 days. Some of them want to be able to buy cars online. And some of them to be able to make a payment online. So there's a lot of expectations about our user, and that's one of the reasons that we take a website that looks like this. We end up having something that looks like this. There's CSS, there's JavaScript involved. There's a lot of things that is involved here to manage the user interactions. And all of this, once again, happen is because we got some sort of state management to manage application, right? And when people start thinking about managing a state of an application, they're starting going to reach out to libraries for state management, such as Mobex, maybe Redux, maybe Flux, or something's different. And here's how they go. They go like this. Well, today we're going to take this thing a little bit further. Before we talk about our main subject, let's take things a little bit back. Let's talk about Redux. We're going to give you guys an introduction about Redux. What is Redux? But here's the description. It is an open source project. That means it is something that is free to use. We don't need to pay for it. It is something that is maintained by volunteers. They are not people that get paid for working on that project. Once again, all of this allows you to manage the state of your application. Redux is a fantastic tool to use. You can manage an entire large application. But some of the people are really told, hey, especially folks that just got into React, and they were like, hey, if you're using React, you need to be using Redux. And some of the people don't really know what Redux is all about. Like, they've been told, hey, you need to use this thing because it works really great with React. But in reality, that's not the main purpose about Redux is. In fact, and to kind of bring some clarification here, and I'll share this story. I think this is one of the stories that not a lot of people heard. When React got into place, when the person, and I'm going to introduce his name shortly in the next line, the person that actually built Redux, when he put the project out there, and people started using it without not even knowing what Redux was about. It has over 1,000 stars. And then, this is when he introduced Redux. He introduced Redux into a conference that he was doing in 2015. And by the way, Redux only have 3 years. He introduced Redux into a conference that he was doing about hot reloading. I will show you slides shortly. But the main purpose about Redux, or the whole idea about Redux, come from the Flux architecture. Have you, anybody heard of Flux? All right. So Flux is another state management that allows you to manage application. However, there's a lot of things involved. There's a lot of stores you need to keep. There's a lot of things that you need to put and the creator of Redox. And he said, you know what? These stars, these many stars, just don't make sense. And here's what he did. He said, we're going to take the stars, we're going to convert them into reducers plus flux, and this is what's going to give us today what we call Redux. And the creator of Redux, his name is Dan Abramov. The first time he introduced Redux was in 2015 into a conference called App Reloading with Time Traveling. That's the first time that people really know what Redux is all about. But once again, Redux is awesome for managing the state. And one of the things I love about development, and I think that's also good for some of you here that think about building an application, the first thing you need to think whenever you want to optimize your application is you need to think about optimizing your workflow. Which means if your development environment is crap, then you need to probably think about optimizing your work environment before you optimize your application. And that's what the thing Redux is all about. Redux has this beautiful tools, the Redux developer tools. It is fantastic. It is amazing. And what this is about is, hey, if I do some changes, I can go back to any time that I want and see how the state is being changed. There's a lot of things that you can do with it. All right. What's next? Let's talk a little bit about context, an introduction about context. What is it? Here's the description from Facebook itself. Context provides a way to pass data through the component tree. Now the question is, what is a component tree? We're going to show you that in a second, but there's something interesting here. Passing data from the component tree without having to pass props down manually at every level. And here's what they're talking about. Let's think about this as a component tree. Here's our data. We got our component. We got our one component called container component. We have another one called child component. We have, of course, another one, different order component. Now, whenever you want to pass data from the container component all the way to the last child, there's something in React you're going to get into. And this is not something you want to get yourself into. It is something called prop drilling. Anybody use prop drilling before? All right, fantastic. If you're building a React application, you see yourself having to pass props along from the parent to the child, to the child, to the subchild, you're doing something wrong. And this is when people start reaching out to library like Redux, library like Mobex, library like, different or whatever other ones they have out there, and so many other things. Well, today I'm here to tell you, you don't need those libraries if your application is not too big. And that's one of the things context is doing for you. Context allow you to take your prop drilling scenario and make all your data available throughout your entire application. It allows you to access any data in any component anytime that you want. Anytime something updates, it also automatically updates. But now the question is, when did that context come into place? Maybe some of you are using it, you might be, okay, when did that thing come into place? Well, here's the day it come into place. This is the date. March 29, 2018. And what's the version? The version is 16.3.0, which means if you're using React, any lower version, you might not have the ability to use context yet. You'll be using an old context API. We're going to talk about it in a second. And this is the day that they finally make it available or official to the entire community. And this is when React was introduced to the whole world. But the question is React context a new thing? Is it something new? The response is no. The truth is that the context has been part of React for a very long time. It's been there, but nobody uses it. And the question is why? And here's why. It's because React told us not to use it. It was what they call unstable. It was what they call not ready. It was what they call don't touch it. That's why we're not able to use it. But there's something that's interesting too. While React was saying don't use it, but there's something else that was using it. And that thing is Redux. It was actually using the not stable version of contacts. The not stable one. Really interesting, right? Alright, so let's go over some differences which we're gonna show you guys. I think got that from JD that came with some pretty pros and cons about Redux and context, so we're gonna walk you guys with some of them. And the new stable version is new. The community behind it is very small, which means if you start using it now and trying to find help online, you might be on your own. It is very small. There's not a lot of modular example. There's not a lot of help out there. So there's a really small community behind it and not a lot of people are using it yet. And we're going to do a live demo tonight and show you how we can interact with it. The way it is now, not a lot of people has really come with a way to really architecture an application that could be modular. So there's not a lot of modular example. All that being there out there right now in the industry was, hey, context is going to replace Redux. And I will share with you one of the quote from one of the Redux maintainer, and you will take it from there of what you should consider using. And of course, I will definitely say what you should be using as well. But these are some cons about it. Small community, not a lot of modular example helpers out there. But what are some pros? Well, let's go over some pros real quick. It is part of React. You don't need any extra package. By the time you use React 16.3 or 16.3.0 in March 29, 2019, you are using context. You don't need to install any other packages to be able to use that. The learning curve. There's a small learning curve. It is very easy to use. A couple methods, you're ready to start an application. The learning curve is very, very small, and the community support is going. Even though there isn't a lot of people out there yet that's using it, but it's going. And that's one of the reasons we have talk like this, to talk about context and to kind of show you guys how to use it. It is going. And it's great for small, medium-sized application. If you're building an application that is very small, or maybe medium-sized application, and you don't need something like Redux, you need to think about using Context API. These are the time that you need to think about using it because it makes those data flow throughout your application. All right, let's go about Redux. Let's go over some cons about Redux. Let's see if we can go to the next slide here. Redux, it requires additional package. It's not part of React. Redux is something that you can use with even Angular if you want to. You can use Redux with different other libraries, even with Vue if you want to. However, Vue.js has its own library called Vuex that you can use it. So it requires an additional package. The learning curve. If you're new into the industry, or maybe even though you're not new, I know some folks that have been coding for 10, 15 years, Redux is still something that takes them a lot of time to master. The bundle size. So once you install it, it increases on your bundle size. It introduces complexity. What does that mean? If you want to change just a name, you need to think about going to at least 3 to 4 different places to just change your name. Seriously? Yes. This is Redux. It introduces complexity. And the other thing, it's overkill for small and medium applications. If you're building an application and the first thing you're thinking about is Redux, you need to rethink. Seriously, you don't need Redux for everything. And even the founder of Redux, the creator of Redux, Dan Abramov, even said, write an entire article about you might not need Redux. What are some pros? Not React specific, of course, which means you can use it with other libraries. You can use it with even vanilla JavaScript if you want to. You can use it with any other thing. And here's the best one. It has a huge community about it. There's people everyone on the internet. There's people on YouTube, Udemy, you name it, writing or doing videos about Redux. So there's the community that out there for Redux. It's really, really huge. And there's a tons of examples and tutorials about it. It's really, really awesome. It is small in size. It is something that is very small, but still you need to think about, installing extra packaging. But here's the other thing that I like. If you're building the next Facebook, if you're building the next Instagram, maybe you're building the next Google, then Redux is a fantastic tool for this. It is fantastic for great environment because you get every single tools you need in order to build an application for it to scale. So you got middlewares. Middlewares, you can easily plug them with Redux. There's a lot of people that are writing middlewares as well. Myself, I use a lot of middleware that I write to help run things at work that are really, really, really fantastic. So if you're building an application that's definitely going to change the world, then you need to think about using Redux. Once again, it is really, really awesome. But one more time, Redux versus context. Which one should you use? Here's my personal opinion. If you're building a very small, tiny application, I'm sure you've heard it, definitely use context. If you're building a large application, you need Redux. And here's what the maintainer of Redux itself. If you only use Redux to avoid passing down props, then context could replace Redux. But then, you probably didn't need Redux in the first place. And of course, I'm not going to say anything else. And believe it or not, we're going to do live demo. That's the scary part. All right. Let's see. So what I was able to do is, and over the weekend, I did this over the weekend. I built this simple application, and we're going to see how it works. Actually, I can switch and show you. No, we're going to do it together. All right. So I built this simple application. It is an extension. It is a Chrome extension that currently a lot of tutors are using from Central Support that I built, which is really cool. But this is a new version that I just refactored. So it's very, very basic. And this is a new version that I was able to refactor. And my first thing I did the same thing wrong too, because my first choice was, hey, use Redux. And it ended up being a pain because even changing one piece of the code, it was really a nightmare. But after I switched it with Context API, it was so amazing. I was able to do that just like within hours, which was fantastic. But how it works is you can add a student, you can feel free to add a student. Of course, now it's not working because we're going to do a live demo together. And we're going to try to show you how the Redux codes work. And we're going to try to do this one inside Context API. And you can feel free to delete a student. So once you have a student, you'll be able to see a lot of students here. And beside deleting your student, you can also add your tutor info. But there's a really nice feature that we're going to explore together, which is if you add a Google URL and you have an amount of student inside of it, and I'll show you what I'm talking about in a second. We're going to plug, it will bring all these students and display them into the student list. So it's really, really an awesome application we're going to try to build tonight using Context API. But anyway, let's go into coding. We're going to go a little bit technical, okay? All right, I'm going to show you guys, quickly show the code for Redux. So here's Redux. Of course, it's a 13 kilobyte, right? We got our store, very basic. We first got our provider. This is our store. This is typical things that we see. And what else that we see? We can go into our store and see what we got down there. Here's our store. We first bring some middleware. The middleware we're using over here, we got Redux Promise middleware. And then we create our store. We export our store. Of course, we bring our store back into here. And we pass it to the provider. And now every single component that you're using. And then you have to dispatch every single actions. And if you want to get anything within the state, you need to map state. And beside all of this scenario, you have to connect them to the store, export them. And of course, if you're building an application, the way we usually architecture our application, we usually create a file called home.js. And this is where we're going to leave every single business logic. So this is where we're going to leave all our business logic.
then we have another component called home.ui, and this is where we put all our application here. But once again, you need to bring all these actions. There's a lot of things involved here, and there's so many things that could be simplified, and this is where Context API gonna comes into place. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the same application, and we're gonna try to add every single functionality into it, such as adding a student. For now, if you add a student, of course it will break. It will of course break, but it will break eventually. You see, so it breaks. Our application doesn't have any state management yet. It doesn't know how to add data. Of course, we don't have any student. We cannot delete. There's so many things that we can't do within our application right now. So let's build something with Context API. Let's see what we need to do now. The way I actually do this will technically architecture my Context API structure here. I would create a star folder for it. For example, I have here a folder called star, and I have index.js. Within that, this is where I'm going to be using, building my Context API in order for me to work with it. And how I'll do this, or how to get started with context, is very simple. You just need to store a variable. We can call it context. Now, it doesn't have to be context. The only thing that's interesting you need to do is it needs to be coming from the React itself. So everything you need to do is you need to put this line in order to create your first Context API. Now, the cool thing about it is this call return an object. And this object itself, we provide you with two things. It has something called provider. It also got something called consumer. Now, the provider itself, this is how you store every single data within your context. This is where you put every single data. Think about it as your store, okay? This is where you put everything. And then you got the consumer, this is how any component that wants to use any data within your store will be using the consumer, and that's how it's going to know to use the data within your store itself. So basically, whenever you invoke this function, this is just a function that returns an object that does this for you. All right, so what we're going to do here, we're going to try to do a couple of things. The first thing that I'm going to try to do is I'm going to change this function, and one thing I'm going to try to do is I'm going to create a new function, and this time I'm going to create some sort of wrapper. And the reason I'm creating the wrapper is I want to wrap my entire application under that provider for all of them to be able to get this thing. So I'm going to use typical step thing here with React component. This is going to be my wrapper that's going to allow me to wrap everything. And what I want to do here is I'm going to bring that provider. So I'm going to do, remember, this one's going to have a provider that's going to be coming. So I can do something like this. Then also close that one. There you go. I got something like this. So here's my provider. But once again, I want to be fancy as a developer. Of course, I can refactor it, but we're going to keep it for now. All right. Once you have your provider, there is an attribute that it takes. And this is not me creating this attribute. It is React asking you, hey, you need to use that attribute, otherwise it won't be able to work. Like, this is a requirement. It's not a guessing one, or maybe I could just say, you know what, React, let's call this one name and see how cool React is. Nope. The attribute needs to be value. And it takes an object, and within your object, you can have another object, and this is where you start putting all your data. For example, I can have name now, different things, and I can have age. So you think about it, I can have so many data that you can possibly think of. One of the things I would like to do here is wrap return to children. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Children. Once I have this component, I'm going to export this component. Export this provider. I could have just say this. Instead. Cool. And that's it. Once I have this component here, this is pretty basic. Once again, I can bring this component inside my index store. And if you guys want to see the index, this is where I'm bringing it. The main root of that index, I'm going to bring that provider down here. So, cool. I got the provider. And once I have the provider that I just built, I just need to wrap my application around it. Let's bear with me. We're almost there. Cool, things looks nicer, we're good to go. But once again, once we wrap our entire application within that provider, And what do we have inside our provider? Here's the data we have. We have name and age. These are the two data that we have right now. And these are the data that is available inside the React context itself. Now, how do we use this data? We can use this data within any component. For example, if I want to use this data within this component, I'm going to have to use consumer, because this is how consumer work in order for me to be able to bring that data. But I'm going to do something a little bit fancy. I'm going to make this one a little bit kind of like a wrapper, right? It's kind of like the same thing with Redux, connect with store. So we're going to try to do something very basic here. And what I'm going to do in this scenario is I'm going to use a higher order component. Bear with me, guys. We're almost there. The consumer, the way it works is a little bit interesting. And here's how it works. It requires inside your JSX. Remember, when we're working with Context API, we're going to be working with two things. The first thing we're going to be working with is the provider. The second thing is the consumer. Pretty straightforward, right? The way we're building it, we're making it a little bit modular for us to be able to use it throughout the entire application. So that's why we're going to have this wrapper that wraps our entire application and makes all our store available to the entire application over consumer. But here's how consumer work. It needs to be a function inside your JSX. Like, this is a requirement. It has to be a function. If you don't have a function, you don't have a consumer. It is very critical. Once you have that consumer, then let's say I pass a container component here as the parameter. If you guys haven't used higher order function before, definitely check it out. Then I can put this component right there, and this function is gonna return what they call a parameter. We call it context, but this parameter can be anything. It could be data, it could be context, it could be value. What really matters about this parameter here is this is going to be the data that comes from your store. This is going to be the data that comes from the provider, and you can easily be able to use it. All right, and then I can take this data and use ES component. Now, if I want to connect every single component with, oops, did I do something wrong? Yep, good. All right, so if I want to connect every single component I want or I have with data that is inside the context API, the only thing that I need to do is bring this function that I call connect store. For example, if I want to use it inside my home component, I can bring this function here and say, this is gonna bring this function here and works cool. Yes, code is a little bit low. I just feel like I typed too fast in it. Anyway, and I just need to bring this function, and now I technically wrap my component around it. And the way I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna store my component here as home and said this is going to be connect store and pass my component down here. And now, only thing that I need to export is I need to export home, because, oops. And in order for me to be able to access those data, if I just do console log prop, data spin it for a try. Refresh, oops, I'm getting an error. That's cool. Expect that on line 38. Index be inside a consumer. There you go. We're talking about a consumer, and then we forgot to do that. So we'll wrap this one inside a consumer. So that's going to put this one in there. And we should be able to take this one for a spin and see what happens. So we connect the home with the store, and we are console logging whatever is coming from the prop. So we should be able to see the data. Let's refresh that. Console log. Cool, no errors. And there we go. Here's our data. We got an object. This object, there's a lot of things happening here. Of course, this is connecting to React Router. We're seeing a lot of data from React Router. But check this out. This is coming all the way from my context API. And if I change any data inside of here, for example, here's my provider. Where's my provider? Inside the index. Here's my provider. If I add some more data, maybe I can add something called message. If I do this, and we load the page again. Of course, React has this reloading, which is fantastic, awesome. You see, I got this message. Once again, all of this data are coming from Context API itself. So the structure is very easy. You create your provider. The way we're building it's a little bit modular that helps you use it wherever you want to use it. And then we build this higher order function that allow you to connect any component with whatever you have in the Context API. So one of the easy way or easy things that I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to set a state. I'm going to set a state. I got a very basic state here that I'm always using. And we're going to take it for a spin again, but this time it's going to be a good spin. All right, so I have a state. I got a state here. I got some data from my state. I got a student array, got a tutor name, Google Sheet, events. I got some very basic data in my state. So I want to send all those data down to any component that is using it. To do this, I can just say this dot state, and this is going to take whatever data that is inside my state and send it down to any component that is consuming data from my Context API itself, which is spreading it. And now, of course, if I go to home, you guys already seen, I'm seeing the Google Sheet, I'm seeing the events, I'm seeing the roster name, I'm seeing the static. There's a lot of things that I'm seeing. And now to connect it to any other component, for example, if I go to add, if I click this, if I go to add is not yet using Context API yet. So in order for me to connect it, the only thing that I need to do is go over where I add student, and I'm gonna go ahead and bring that function in. And that function was, I'm gonna do, where is it? Store / index, and I'm gonna bring this function. My VS Code is so slow. Probably it's about to be raining. Of the function. Hopefully I got it right. I think so. The path is right. Yep. Okay. So now I'm gonna connect my other add student component. I can just say this one's gonna be add student, and this one's gonna be of course this store, and I'm gonna connect my component. My component name was add student, so I technically connected right there. And now I'm exporting this one here. And of course, if I go down here and console log some data, all right, and the path is not right. All right, so where's the path? I'm in the student, so I need to go 1, 2, even 3 level up. All right, let's find that. Let's refresh. There we go. So I'm on the student, and I'm also seeing data from my context itself. What about this? How cool is it? We're able to access data throughout our application by just connected with our custom function that we just built, which is pretty awesome. And of course, I'm gonna connect into two other components, and then we're gonna go really into the gritty stuff. One last thing, I can copy this, and the last component I'm gonna connect into is the delete component. So I'm gonna do delete component, and I'm gonna bring this same one here. We're almost there, guys. Bear with me. The talk itself almost done because I don't like coding. A lot of coding. All right, so I'm gonna do connect this one with this component, and then I can just do connect it. Boom, this one's gonna connect. Once again, I don't want to lock this because I feel like it's gonna connect anyway. And best practice, that's one we're gonna connect. Bear with me. The last one is this one, which is be connecting to whatever data I have inside my Context API. So let's take it for a spin again. Let's see what we got. All right, so if I go to the home, you see I'm seeing in data from context, which is awesome. If I go to add, let's clear that. So go back again, let's clear that. If I go to add, I'm seeing data from context, which is pretty awesome. If I go to delete, which is also I'm seeing data from context, also fantastic. If I go to info, amazing. But I'm able to access the data within my state, right? I'm able to access data within my context global state. But what if I want to change data inside of it? How do we do this? Well, there's different ways that we can code things out. One of my favorite ways, and I think this JD came with this example. Sorry, man, I stole it from you. That's what we do. We use Stack Overflow. I mean, see what other people are saying or doing, and then steal things. We just Google things. Anyway, if I go over to my store in this time, which is index, here's one thing I'm gonna do. Now I have all my function. If we look at this, that will look similar with you. I think it's action, cool. If you look at this, that looks pretty familiar, right? This kind of seems like Redux, where you have all your action inside of things. But there's something here that's interesting. Before we talk about that interesting thing, let's connect them inside our store. There's so many things happening. I love context. Anyway, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring all my action as actions, and I'm gonna bring this one. I think I'm in the right location. All right. My PS Code is not working as expected, but there's something here that I want to do. What if I want to change data inside my state? Inside my state that is inside my context API. Right now, any data we pass down here are considered data that is inside context itself, right? But what if I wanted to be able to change data inside of it? Of course, to change data into React, we have to use something called this.setState. That's the way we change data inside React state. And we have this React state. And of course, if you guys don't feel like this is great, we can feel free to use a constructor. I know there are super folks that are picky about that. Just want to put it before some people start yelling at me. I got yelled at because of this. I mean, I've seen some developers over there that are so picky. I don't know, it's just application work, man. Chill out. But yeah, I love coding. Anyway, long story short, if I want to be able to change data inside my state, I want to be able to use this function, to utilize this function. One thing I can do is I can create a function here. I'm going to call it attach method. I'm going to have all my actions or my new actions, and I'm going to modify them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them access to this capacity for them to be able to use that set state. So in order for me to do that, I can do for loop action. So I'm looping over every single action. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put every single new action inside this new object. And this time, every single action, I'm going to bind them by this keyword. And now, this new data here, that's going to have a lot of function that are binding by this keyword. And the only thing that I can do is return my new actions. How cool is this? Once this function is completed, the only thing I need to do on my end to also send function. You can also send function inside the provider. This is the provider. You can also send function inside of it. So I'm going to send all of whatever this function is going to return. And that should be it. Oops, I think I'm missing a comma. Oh, jeez. Okay. All right, one thing to note here. Inside a provider, not only you can send one data, but you can also send functions. You can send functions, arrays, object, whatever you guys want to send to that provider itself. And now I'm sending this entire function, which is returning this entire object full of other functions that are binding by this keyword. And take a look at my new actions now, what I have inside of it. I have different functions, which is great. But there's something here that's interesting. I'm using that state inside my other actions. And the whole reason is because I'm binding it by this keyword, and that makes that set state available for them. And now I can be able to write as many functions as I want, and all of them will be able to get access to that state. And I can modify things inside my context API, change data however I want to. Let's take this one for a spin and see what happened. And now if I go over the add student, let's try to add a student. But once I add a student, something happened. And now I got my student inside my context state. And here's it. It's inside this object. And now, if I go back into delete, my student is in there. Context takes all my data and make it available throughout my application. But here's the other thing. If I go into the home, my data is there. How cool is that? Context is awesome. And here's the other interesting thing. I can feel free to delete it. And if I delete it, it's deleted everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Context API. But there's something cooler. Let's find this out. We're going to try something, and if it works, we're going to close the talk. If it doesn't, I'm going to please ask for another 2 hours, and we're going to debug this together. But let's hope it works. Let's hope it works. All right, let's find this out. Let's do it. Okay, so here's a spreadsheet. We all work with spreadsheet, right? We all got data that we work with. Over here, I got a lot of students. This is what we do as a tutor team. But check this out. There's different rows. There's class code, there's graduation code, there's student name, there's email, there's student GitHub page, and all of this data. And I want to be able to bring them into my application. And if I bring them into my application, the cool thing about Context API is it's going to make the student available everywhere, which means I can delete them, I can edit them, I can do anything that I want. Let's see how we can do that. Only thing I need to do is copy this URL and then go back to the application. I'm gonna go to, but check this out. My student is now empty. There's no student. Anyway, let's try it. If I add this link, the only thing I need to do is add this link. And if I click this button, something happens successfully. Do we get the student? Or do we not get the student? Finger crossed. Do we want to stay here for another 2 hours? Or do we want to... All right, that's getting interesting. All right, let's find out. Let's go to the home page. No student yet. Should we click on it or not? All right. Hold on. Hold on. All right, hold on. All right, let's do it. And ladies and gentlemen, I saw my student. And I can feel free to delete as many as I want to. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Context API.